Welcome to SF Heal. I'm Dr. Lance Von Stade. We are here in San Francisco, and I'd like to welcome my guest, Dr. Holly Schonberger. She is a Network Spinal Chiropractor here in San Francisco at Golden Gate Chiropractic Center. And I've actually been looking forward to interviewing her in general, but more recently, there was a hot topic that came through a lot of our practice members. They are fans of the Goop and the Goop Labs show on Netflix that came out. And if you haven't seen it, you can go watch it for more context on this. But if you are watching this, you may already know what I'm talking about. There is one of the episodes in this season or series on energy healing. And one of the people that's there is a chiropractor, the other is a DO, and they go pretty deep into some energy healing. And you start to see some people wiggling and wobbling and crying and some stuff that we get to see on the table sometimes in our practice because we are facilitating healing. And if you're watching this, you're probably a healthcare provider somewhere in the world, and you might see some stuff on your table, but it's not often shared with the public on video. And so we wanted to shed some light on the topic of healing and emotional expression and energy work and network spinal chiropractic, network spinal chiropractic, since that's what Holly does. And so welcome to the show. And as an opening, I just want to see have you watched the Goop Lab episode, and what's your opinion of what's the conversation happening in the community?
Totally. So thank you for having me. Very excited to be here. The the Goop Lab that episode was really, really cool for me because this is work that I've been talking with people about for a long time, and that has been going on in our profession for a long time, but has yet to be publicized in this way. So I'm really grateful that Gwyneth Paltrow decided to do this and bring Dr. John Amaral on and share his gift with the world. It's been received in a multitude of different ways, honestly. Some people are, absolutely sign me up. This looks awesome. Like, I would love to have that experience. And, some people are, like, what is happening on the table? Like, are these people being hurt or, are they choosing to participate in this? So it all ends of the spectrum, I would say. And more so, I think people are just intrigued. People are interested. They're seeing this and they're saying, I've never seen anything like this before, even though stuff like this and energy healing has been going on for thousands and thousands of years in Chinese medicine. So I'm really excited for this to kind of blow up in a sense and for people to have the opportunity to experience this work. I think it's a really great invitation, and I think Dr. John did a great job highlighting our profession and highlighting our technique specifically, and I'm just really excited for people to experience this work.
Nice. Yeah, so I'm one of them. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
And for some context on my background, I when I was in chiropractic school had a severe back injury, ruptured my L5 disc, radiculopathy for months and months, and I saw multiple chiropractors, and it wasn't until I went and saw someone who did network spinal analysis out in the East Bay, Jane Arst, who gave me some cues on my breathing that I won't even repeat here that were very effective.
Yeah.
and it changed my paradigm of what was possible in a chiropractor's office, in any setting where I was going to be trying to fix back pain. Was in the moment all I needed to do. And it introduced me to my body in a very different way. And I'm also, because of my mentor, Aaron Brock, the director of performance for USA Volleyball, he a long time ago told me, as a healthcare professional, it's so healthy to be an open-minded skeptic. And so even though I was having these results, I was still trying to be skeptical. I wanted to just let it go. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And how the hell is this working? It's light touch. And all I'm doing is breathing and moving in certain ways. Why is this so effective? Mm-hmm. And that began a journey for me that has continued to unravel and open up to other things that I don't understand. So I'm, again, grateful to have you on here to help bring light to this world that I am still diving into and learning about. And so now what's some of I'll even bring up some of the things that I've heard from people who are questioning this.
Sure.
And in the episode, you see Dr. John's hands 5 feet up above the person. You see him not touching them, but they're wiggling and waving and moving about. Can you describe some of what is happening, some of the more obvious stuff where he is touching them and things are happening versus when hands are away and things are still happening?
Yep, totally. So great question. As Dr. John said in the beginning of the episode, less than 5% of our entire universe is physical matter. And he went on to talk about how every single person has 4 to 6 feet of an energetic field that comes off their body, which is why a lot of times you'll say you get a bad vibe from somebody, or you love the energy that someone had when you were around them. Like, we can literally feel that from person to person, depending on, how connected we are to our intuition. And so he has been doing this work for years and years and years, and he has developed that sensitivity to be able to feel that energetic field off of someone's body. And depending on how sensitive someone is to energy, because you'll meet people who are really, really sensitive, and it might be hard for them to be in public because they feel so much from everybody. Yeah. And you'll meet people who are the opposite, right? And so if you're working with someone who's very sensitive, your hands could be 5 feet off of their body, and they're still experiencing something. They're still feeling you, because if you think about it, they have 5 feet of energy. Well, so do you. So if you're up here, you're still sending 5 feet worth of energy into their body. There's still a conversation happening between your body and their body. As far as the physical touch goes, obviously that's more direct. And you hear Dr. John talking about the field, right? And that comes back to that energetic field that everyone has. And one way by making a contact or coming from like up here down into the body is you can literally take energy from the energetic field and introduce it into someone's system with a light touch. And it's just information that's being taken from the field and being introduced into someone's body.
Like you're grabbing energy and pulling it in, or it's like this magnet?
Yeah, it can be described as any of those things. Yeah. It just depends, right? You might talk to 10 different network spinal practitioners and they might all have a different answer for you. And also on top of that, we are all made of energy, right? Like everything in the universe is made of energy. So there's already energy in this system that can be utilized also through those touches. So depending on the practitioner, what outcome they're trying to have in the care, what type of experience they're wanting to help this person have, they might be at different layers of depth working with that person's tissue. So it might be a deeper contact where you're like really sinking into their muscular system, or it might be a lighter contact where you're just barely touching the skin and contacting with connective tissue, or it might be up off their body. It just depends on what type of stage of their care that they're in and what type of information can we give to this person's system that will be productive for them. Because if we go too deep too soon, or we offer intelligence into their body that they're not ready for, it can send someone's system into complete havoc, and chaos can start. And that can be really painful for someone if they're not ready for change, if they're not ready for growth, if they're not ready to acknowledge or be aware of tension patterns that are being stored in their system. That can really mess with someone's body. So it's a very specific, calculated analysis that leads us to making the decisions that we do when we connect with someone's body.
Yeah. So I want to get into the analysis, but before we do, I kind of want to back up to when you are 5 feet above, you have 5 feet of energy from your human energetic field, and the person on the table has 5 feet of energy, and so those energetic fields are interacting with each other.
Yep.
I imagine that as the provider, the practitioner, the facilitator, you need to train the ability to perceive that. And that's where my open-mindedness stays there, is like, I can't judge this because I have not spent decades training, feeling energy 5 feet away from people. But I do understand that I can feel when I'm being watched. I can feel when something's not right, even though I'm not able to put my finger on what it is that's causing me to think that. And so I imagine the person on the table could also be perceiving that in different layers. Maybe someone who is on the table can also be training input from someone else at that distance and letting it move their body in certain ways. Is that part of the process.
The training.
Yeah.
Totally. Another example he uses in the show is in chiropractic school, they used to take a needle or a penny and put it in a phone book, and they would turn multiple pages over and over and over again till they got to the point where there was a fat stack of pages in between the penny and their hand, and they would develop that sensory motor skill of being able to feel the penny through more and more pages, to the point where there's 500 feet worth of book in between the penny and your hand and you can still feel it. So it's definitely something that's developed over time, the same way that you hone in acupuncture skills over time, or with the way that you adjust, you've taken hours and hours and hours of your life to hone that skill in a way that no one else does it, right? So it's the same thing here, where as you move through the work and as you see thousands and thousands of people, you might be taking your hand up and down off their body to test where their field is at, because depending on what this person has experienced in their life, different traumas, just being a person going through life, their energetic field might be different in some way. So like it might be 3 feet off of them in one direction, 5 feet off of them in another, 6 inches off of them in a different direction. So there's all these different types of things that we can encounter in life that can affect our field. And so it's same way again with you learning the technique adjusting that you do is just years of practice and trying different things. And obviously with the frame of mind of like do no harm, right? Like not just doing wild stuff on people, right? But playing around and seeing what feels different on different people in a same spot, where if you over years and years, you see people and you start to see certain patterns in certain people who've experienced similar events in their lives, that can kind of give you the data to be able to say, okay, I've noticed this certain thing in one person, I've noticed this certain thing in another, and I've seen multiple people who've experienced similar events. Their energy field is different to me. Their tension patterns feel different to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think in my mind, if I was an audience member, I'd be maybe questioning what is the field. Maybe I don't have any practical application for what that means. And I taught cellular physiology at the college level and got to dive really deep in teaching that, and also having these questions come at me from students and what on earth is happening here. When you draw from an electron being a negative and a proton being a positive, and like an atom being electromagnetic in its origin as well, everything's built from there. Even just the electrical activity in a cell puts off an electromagnetic field, and then you have multiple cells, and those fields have to become coherent in order to work together. Build that all the way up till you have a whole human organism, and now you have this field that comes off the body that does have an electromagnetic influence on its environment. It is definitely new to me to become aware of that and to try to play in that world. But I can now more accurately rationalize how that's possible. So now to go to the analysis, or actually I wanted to touch on just the light touch also, because you said there's the big movements of the energy, and then there's actually the physical touch, and how can something so subtle be so powerful? I did jiu-jitsu for a long time when I was younger, and I'm a huge fan of Joshua Waitskin, who's a Tai Chi push hands champion, and he talks in his book, The Art of Learning, about when you get to the highest levels of performance, you're holding each other, but you're already in your mind thinking about the subtle movement they're going to make, and you're trying to counter the movement before they make the movement, and then you're faking a counter movement before they make a movement they haven't made yet. And the highest levels, it's so mental. The subtle energies that are traveling are unbelievable. And, we talk about martial arts and healing arts. And I think it's a very similar energy that's happening. And so now I can see where the subtle touch could be very powerful if applied in the right place at the right time, like you were talking about before we got on the show. Can you talk about the analysis of how do you know the right place and the right time and when to make that move?
So Donnie Epstein, over the last 30 years, has developed very specific analysis that goes along with Network Spinal. And there's a very specific pre-check and post-check that you do on every single person that you see. And the point of this is to make sure that the work is replicable, and that if you are doing a pre-check on someone let's say you can tell that they have a lot of spinal cord tension on the right side of their body when you do your analysis in the beginning. After you make a contact and you take them through an entrainment, which is Network Spinal's version of an adjustment, at the end, you're doing the same analysis because the outcome you want to see is that tension on the right side of the body to drop down, right? So
because less tension on one side equals health?
Good question. When there is a lot of tension in someone's body, it's just a different way of saying that the person's body is experiencing a lot of stress. Okay. And when our nervous system, our brain, and our spinal cord are experiencing a lot of stress, the function and adaptability of our body drastically decreases. So having some tension is a good thing, because if you didn't have any tension at all, you'd be goop on the floor, right? Like we have to have tension to goop. You have to have tension in your body to hold the whole thing together, right? But if there are areas that have massive amounts of high tension or massive amounts of high tone, if someone's walking through their everyday life experiencing a ton of tension or tone, they are then distracted from the rest of their lives. They are not able to be present in their lives. And typically that's physical stress, emotional stress, anything that we experience in life that can be overbearing for us or too much, or just everyday life is really stressful nowadays for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. And so we can store that stress in our body as tension.
But is there a certain amount? I mean, life is stressful, and the same stress that breaks us down makes us stronger if we can cope with it.
Yep.
Is the amount of tension relative to the amount of stress, or is the amount of tension relative to the inability to cope with the stress?
Great question.
Is that part of the analysis?
Yeah. So definitely the second one, right? The more optimally our spinal cords and brains are functioning, the better that we are able to adapt to stress, both in our internal and external environment. So if our bodies are experiencing more tension or destructive tension, it's going to be harder for us to adapt, which is why if your body's not under a lot of tension or a lot of stress and you go and are around a bunch of germs, you probably won't get sick because your body is able to adapt to those germs. If you're under a lot of stress at work or stress with your family at home, your immune system isn't functioning as properly because your brain and spinal cord can't tell your immune system what to do. You come into contact with the same exact germ that you did before and you end up getting sick. Does that make sense?
I've felt that with a fever breaking, and the discomfort in the moment before the fever breaks and the release that I experience afterward. Because this is also something that I had a hard time getting on board with, was how my physical tension and my adaptability of my spine, my brain, my nervous system had anything to do with me and a germ, because a germ is going to come and make me sick. When I realized that my body would adapt a certain tension pattern in order to more effectively fight, then I started to get on board with it. And then I remember having the experience of feeling so uncomfortable and just bared down under a blanket, shivering, fever. And then all of a sudden it was like, and the fever broke, and I just felt almost euphoric.
Yep.
And no longer worried that this bug or thing that I was having a hard time adapting to was going to be something I couldn't deal with. And that was an aha moment for me. It was, wow. My immune system accomplished its goal, and it released all the tension from my body.
Yep.
And that is something I think is an amazing experience for anyone to have. And you have been instrumental in my understanding of how that can be true emotionally. And can you touch on that?
Sure. Sorry, can you clarify the question just a little bit?
So how we can be fighting something in our body immune-wise. And I think you were starting to allude toward other things we might be having a hard time dealing with.
Yep.
And how tension will build. And then you can also have that release.
So if I experience something really traumatic, and let's say it's emotional, like let's say my parents get divorced, right? And I'm 8 years old. And I have no idea how to cope with that or manage that, or I don't know how to express myself to say that I'm sad or frustrated or scared or all of the above. We know that emotions can affect us on a cellular level. Dr. Candace Pert proved this in 1985 with the research that she did, showing that our physiology is directly affected by our emotions and that our peptides change when we experience certain emotions. And so if I am feeling a lot of scaredness or anger or whatever, there's a certain posture that comes with that. There's an energetic piece that comes with that. Like emotion is literally the 2 words or the 3 words, energy in motion. That's what emotion means. And so if I'm 8 years old and I'm experiencing all these things and I don't know how to integrate it and I don't know how to cope and I don't know how to deal with it, that feeling of those things, there's a posture for it. And then my body will literally integrate that into the system by way of peptides on a cellular level. And that experience can get stored in our body in a certain tension pattern, like you were talking about earlier. So if you think about what the postures of anger and sadness and being scared look like, it's like hunched over, our shoulders are around it, our brow furrows. And if you experience those emotions enough when you're, again, 8 years old and don't know how to cope with them, it's going to find some place to hibernate in your body until you're at a place where you're able to integrate that experience, where there's enough space in your body, in your mind, in your soul to be able to integrate that experience.
Yeah.
And when you're 8, you could carry that with you until you're 30 years old and not even know that you're carrying any of that with you.
Yep. That's the pebble in the shoe.
Totally.
And
yeah.
that is something I resonate with. Is you're walking, you have a rock in your shoe, and you're not going to just wear your foot out in that one position. So you'll start to limp and offload and walk on the outside of your foot, and then you won't feel the pebble. Doesn't mean the pebble's gone, but you've just accommodated a whole new way of carrying yourself where that's not the point of the pain, and that you won't even feel it for a little while until you're a mile down the road, and now all of a sudden your leg is starting to get tired or your back starts to hurt and everything. Now you're limping, and you're also strengthening a pattern of accommodating and compensating for that. And if you never take the pebble out, you might even forget that it was there in the first place.
Exactly.
And then later on, if you finally do get to the point where you take the pebble out of your shoe because you have a moment where you're not running from someone down that road or whatever it is, even when you take the pebble out, the pattern that you've adapted doesn't just go away right away.
Right.
Because your whole body compensated for that little rock. And now that's going to take some time.
Totally. So in the video, Julianne Hough was talking about how John started working on her ankle, right? And then she had this massive energetic release where she got emotional, and it stemmed from a point in her life when she was 10 years old, so like literally 20 years ago, where her parents had recently gotten divorced. Her and her brother were dancing really competitively at the time and went to go live with their dance teachers, and she was able to let go of that experience and the tension that was being held in her ankle from an injury she had at dance during that period of time in her life. Like she wasn't even thinking about that in that moment, right? It was, her body was ready to release that experience and release the tension that experience was storing in her body. And so she's on the table, John's working on her, and then all of a sudden this emotion just floods back to her. She remembers it so vividly, and then all of a sudden she's just like in a euphoric state of like just letting it go. I can guarantee you when she got down on the table, that was not what she was thinking about, nor was that even like in her conscious mind at all. You know, like she's probably thinking about what's going on in her current day life and how this work is going to help her get through whatever she's doing for the next week, right? And then you get down and you're reliving an experience from 20 years ago, and it feels so liberating to be able to be like, wow, I had no idea I was carrying all of that. And then at the end of that experience, you're able to get up and feel like a completely different person, and like a chapter in your book that you didn't even know was closed has closed. That actually brings up another part of the Goop episode where the chief of content, I think is her position. She talks about having an exorcism. And can you touch on that at all? Totally. Yeah. So before I got into this work and before I experienced this work in chiropractic school, I was shit terrified of it. I saw people on the tables doing all kinds of weird stuff, and I was like, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can be like them. I don't know if I can get into this, right? And then the more I watched it and the more I understood what was going on in these people's bodies and what they were experiencing, it was like, oh yeah, sign me up, right? And it's just like anything you don't understand in life, like the more familiar you become with it, it's way less scary. So in my experience, what she was trying to say in a different way, obviously, is that she was having such a big energetic release from her body that it felt like something was literally exiting her. And that is literally energy. Just this stored up tension inside her body was just leaving. And she didn't directly talk about her experience and what memory she had or anything that came with that. Yeah. But it's the same as crying, right? If you cry to let out something emotional, there's a big wave that comes with that, and then you start sobbing, and then you're okay. And it's people don't understand that crying is just an expression of us moving energy through our bodies. Yeah,
taking potential energy and making it kinetic and moving it, which I think also a lot of people don't understand what the definition of energy is, and it's just work.
Yeah, like literally anything
to do work.
Yep.
And leading up to this, knowing we were going to talk about energy, just looking up the definition of the root of the Greek word energy is within work, like working within, which is really cool to think about. And you can look at chemical energy and thermal energy and kinetic and potential and all these different elements, but just knowing like work is being done and there are different mechanisms to do it. And the body has all of those mechanisms built into it.
Your body is the smartest thing that exists in this universe. It is so crazy to think about. When I was in chiropractic school, and I'm sure you can relate, I would get so bogged down and frustrated by all the work and all the stuff. And then I was like, wait a second. Just thinking about the fact that we get to work with human systems for the rest of our lives and help people heal and grow and adapt and reorganize is like, okay, like all this other stuff is completely worth it, right? Like coming back to the why of what we get to do. It's incredible.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think that's a good transition to kind of reach out to the people who are here watching. If they want to learn more about this work, if they want to learn more about you, if they want to experience the work, or they just maybe want to come and dabble and see what's happening.
Totally.
Or if they want to send someone for care, how do they know who's appropriate for this? When do they know that you are the right person to help them?
For sure. So first and foremost, if you Google network spinal practitioner or network spinal analysis is what the work was called before it upgraded to network spinal. So it's still the same thing. But if you Google either of those things, there's a directory. There is an online directory of people who are certified in this work. Yeah. And so that's one really good way. And then also, Donnie Epstein is the founder of Network Spinal, and he spent millions and millions of dollars of his personal money hiring physicists, mathematicians at the University of Southern California, I believe, to research what is happening inside someone's body when this work is being done. And what he found is that everyone has a central pattern generator that creates a wave, through someone's body when they're experiencing this work. And your wave is unique to you like a fingerprint. Yeah. Everyone's wave looks different. And what he learned from this is that energy and information is sent through this wave throughout your spinal cord that allows you to grow and adapt to what's happening in your life. And so that is a big piece of the work. And the people who specifically practice that work will call themselves a network spinal analysis practitioner or a network spinal practitioner. Okay. Yep. So if you're looking for a chiropractor and there's a chiropractor near you, you go to their website, you see the most chiropractors say on their websites what technique they practice. And so specifically looking for this work, you will see those words next to their name. You'll see it on their business card. You'll see it on their email. They will want to tell you that they do this work because it is a very specific work that people spend lots of money and lots of time outside of school to learn.
Yep. And that is the wave when you're touching the body as a network spinal chiropractor. We also acknowledge this and practice this, but we haven't done the work that you've done to understand the subtleties.
Right.
You're working with the spinal cord.
Yeah.
And the body has a reflex built into it to oscillate the sacrum and the upper cervical. And Holly is educating me on more of the details of how this all happens over time. But like I mentioned, I've experienced the results personally. I recommend the care. I recommend finding someone that you can trust, and that's where I would use Holly as a resource because I trust her, and so I can give that recommendation. How do people find you if they're wanting to actually work with you directly?
Good question. I am obviously a part of Golden Gate Chiropractic. We have a website. You can go on our website. You can email goldengatechiropractic@gmail.com. We also have an Instagram page, Goga Chiro. You can check us out there. I have a personal Instagram page, but most of the stuff that I do it through Goga on Instagram. My personal email is hschonbedc@gmail.com.
Nice. Oh, you're getting the bombardment now.
Yeah,
Hit
totally. Yeah,
She
any way. But I do want to touch on one thing that you were talking about as far as the wave goes before we end. A lot of people are really curious about why people are moving so much on the table, and I just wanted to address that real quick. So if you think about a wet towel and you're wringing the water out of a wet towel, and then once you have wrung the water out, what does the towel do?
Unring.
Yeah, it unwinds, right? Yeah. You have created tension in a system. You've created tension in the towel. And then in order for the tension to be released, the towel unwinds. So when you see people moving on the table or doing this wave thing on the table, that is essentially what is happening. The body is so smart that it's helping to find ways to dissipate tension in the system, and it looks like you moving on the table because in order to unwind, you have to move. And when I learned that concept, I was like, wow, people actually moving on the table, that makes so much more sense to me now. Just in having that analogy and understanding, in order to unwind tension, things have to move. Your body has to move. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
And that, I do foundation training, and we, in that world, acknowledge pandiculation is probably the mechanism that works through, which is you wake up in the morning and you yawn. A cat wakes up in the morning and yawns. A baby wakes up and yawns. And after long periods of no movement, the body will produce that pandiculatory reflex in order to reset the alpha gamma loop. And it's the muscle spindles and all the receptors that tell you haven't moved in a long time, things are starting to tighten. And then we just naturally go through an eccentric contraction and lengthen it all out. And you don't necessarily think about that as healing.
Nope.
However, hearing this work, combining it with a lot of the other things that I've understood about tension and ease and disease and
dysfunction,
what can now be considered healing. I'm feeling really excited to be working alongside you and to continue to learn and to bring this work to people who might feel scared or confused or nervous about it. And feel free to reach out to us if you have questions, if you want to learn more. This is just the beginning of a conversation. Our goal with SF Heal is to connect the healthcare community to more of itself and to shine the light on areas that are causing dissipation and dissonance among our community, rather than opening it up to more conversation, more learning, and bringing more ease and healing to our community. Because I think when we all connect, we're going to be able to help each other serve our clients better, our community better, our world better. I think everything rises from there. So thanks so much for taking the time to be here. You heard her and her email address. You can hit her up directly. The Instagram is at GOGA Chiro, at Goga Chiro. And the website is goldengatechiropracticcenter.com if you want to go there. So thanks again.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for having me.